The next step would be for the party's leadership to choose a Menteri Besar. Joining us tonight is political analyst from UiTM, Mujibu Abdul Muiz. Thank you for joining us today, Mujibu. Now, earlier today, UMNO top leadership had an audience at the Johor Palace to discuss MB candidates. Now, what can you tell us about the candidates that are in the running?
Well, thank you, Mia, and have a very good night tonight. Of course, we have heard there are three names that have been forwarded by the UMNO leadership of Johor. But before this, we already know that in their campaign, most of the time they have stood up that Hasni, the Benut representative, will be the Chief Minister or Menteri Besar of Johor. But somehow we know the development after 48 hours, there is no decision yet made, and there is a meeting with the monarch, the Sultan of Johor, to decide. And suddenly we have heard that Datuk Sri Hasni have issued a press statement saying that he ruled out himself to be the new Menteri Besar and support any decision whoever named to be the Menteri Besar, but somehow he strongly suggests that the party should put young people to lead the new government. So in the same time, we also heard that the remedied representative, Dato' Fuad Zarkashi, is also being named, but somehow the latest development says he ruled out himself to be the Menteri Besar, and somehow he support Datuk Sri Hasni to be one. And of course, the most rumors that we heard is Machap representative, Dato' On Hafiz Ghazi. So for the time being, we simply say that it is still undecided, but these two have been strongly associated to be the Menteri Besar. And of course, when you talk about Johor as a monarch rule there, these two will need to go through the consent of the monarch. But somehow, if we consider the statement from Datuk Sri Hasni as well as the consent of the monarch, On Hafiz will fit the bill because he is still young at 43 years old, highly educated, and of course he is coming from the great Johor political dynasty, which is known to have a good attachment with the monarchy. So I believe maybe the strong candidacy for this Menteri Besar maybe On Hafiz, but somehow we need to wait until the end and let us see who is going to emerge as the Menteri Besar after this.
Yes, speaking on Hafiz, we've just heard from incumbent MB Datuk Sri Hasni Mohamad saying that young blood is needed, as you mentioned just now. What does this actually tell you? What kind of leadership does Johor need at this point?
Well, I believe there is no such thing as a small majority to be excused in forming a very good and capable government in Johor. So when Datuk Sri Hasni says he wants a young Menteri Besar, this particularly will refer to the ideas that UMNO need a very strong, capable and hardworking government in which in youngsters this might be able to come out with a plenty and quick economic solution, because I believe the priority of this government, whether it is led by a young Menteri Besar or not so young Menteri Besar, the priority is, of course, the economic well-being, because this is the most sought-after issues by all the voters in Johor. And of course, number two is the idea of having UMNO, portraying UMNO as a vibrant and responsive party, especially to the new political approaches. The call for these new political approaches, equal treatment to opposition, wider commitment to the new political demand in terms of political and institutional reform, and of course the call from the youngster to have more open and transparent administration, and in which all the leaders maintain their highest integrity and government is the trustworthy one. So these all of these things will be suitable enough to be associated with this kind of young Menteri Besar. So I believe if somebody is young, will be chosen as a Menteri Besar. So these criteria need not only to be possessed, but need to be presented to the Johor voters.
Thank you for your insights, Mujibu. Now we are staying on the developments in Johor as they unfold. Who will become the new Menteri Besar, and how does UMNO aim to govern with its traditional allies MCA and MIC? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about the future of Johor politics. That's coming up right after AWANI Tonight. The Johor state poll last Saturday saw a voter turnout of less than 60%. According to Dr. Kartini Khalid, one of the reasons of a low voter turnout was due to hesitancy among young voters to go out and vote. She urged for more political education among the younger generation in order to see higher voter representation in the future polls.
The literacy campaign among undi 18 and above has to be intensified to motivate them to go out and vote. They have to be literate of politics, election, institution and participation. So they have a clear conscience to carry out their duty responsibly. I think one of the reasons to see the voters turnout is was so low because of the undi 18 as kind of the resistance to go a bit hesitant to go out and vote. They're still depending on their parents to bring them to the place to vote.
On where Pakatan Harapan campaign is lacking, Kartini said the opposition parties must focus on campaigning on everyday issues rather than merely talking about eradicating corruption.
Nowadays, we can see that PH and other parties need to work harder to convince the Malays and Bumiputra voters that they are still relevant. Okay? My second point is to look at the demographic-wise. Demographic-wise is still vital in assessing the voter support and rejection. And the PH and other opposition political parties need to strategize their campaign and alliance. If they are not cohesive or uncooperative, they will suffer. They have to start campaigning on other issues, more everyday defined problems to capture voters rather than circling on the corruption, or the 1MDB issue. They have to forget about counting the popularity vote. Our system is not about the 10 most popular music charts depending on the weekends. PH and other parties must be wiser not to be carried away by a popularity vote. The actual ballot is state and parliament as seat. So they have to do their best to get these seats.
Meanwhile, Lim Guan Eng says that one of the main reasons for Pakatan Harapan's poor performance in the Johor state election were a lack of unity within the opposition. The DAP Secretary General says it's pointless to pin the blame on PH's defeat on low voter turnout to cover up for the continued refusal to address the main issues. He added that not using a common logo and its inability to name a suitable Menteri Besar candidate also contributed to PH's defeat. The many opposition parties contesting against each other in Johor had also fragmented support for the opposition. PKR had used its own logo in the elections, while Amanah and DAP contested under the PH banner. PH won only 12 of the 56 seats up for grabs, while Barisan Nasional won 40 seats. The government faces a 17 billion ringgit shortfall to repay 1MDB's outstanding debt. According to Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz, a total of 13.3 billion ringgit of 1MDB's debt has been repaid so far.
He explained that at present there is 15.76 billion ringgit in the 1MDB Assets Recovery Trust Fund. The government was expected also to recover 511 million ringgit from Bank and about 4 billion ringgit from Goldman Sachs. But there is not enough to settle 1MDB's outstanding principal and interest of 38.8 billion ringgit for the period 2023 to 2039. Tengku Zafrul also denied recent claims by former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak that the repayment of 1MDB's debt did not involve the use of the public's money. In fact, he said that the government was forced to provide loans and advances totaling more than 10 billion ringgit to the ministry for the purpose.
We'll continue after the break. Stay with us.
panic.
Ramai orang cakap, bila kita berbuat baik, kebaikan itu akan datang semula. Tapi, kalau kita ikhlas, hikmah besar menanti.
Saat para wira memulakan cabaran, legenda dilahirkan. Kejohanan Yonex All England Open Badminton Championship 2022 secara langsung di Astro.
Welcome back. Russian and Ukrainian negotiators have begun a fourth round of talks aimed at stopping the conflict. Ukrainian officials said the country's position has not changed and that it will focus on achieving a ceasefire, troop withdrawals, and security guarantees for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has continued its assault on Ukrainian cities. In Kiev, 2 people were killed and 3 injured when a shell hit an apartment block in north of Kiev on Monday morning. According to authorities, the death toll from Russia's airstrikes on a military training center near the Polish border on Sunday rose to 35, with 134 wounded. After almost 3 weeks of the ongoing conflict, officials have been giving upbeat assessments of peace talks, but yet to find a solution or a ceasefire. Unlike earlier negotiations that were held on the Belarus border, today's talk is being conducted virtually. As fighting has intensified around Kiev, Ukraine Foreign Minister called on the world to help fight against Russian troops. He urged the West to supply Ukraine with weapons and apply more sanctions on Russia to help prevent other countries from being dragged into a wider conflict.
Ukraine has repeatedly urged its allies to do more to help it resist the Russian invasion. But some Western governments fear that doing so could pull other countries, including NATO member states, into the war. In a Twitter post, Kuleba urged for more sanctions on Russia to isolate it fully. This, he said, will help Ukraine force Vladimir Putin into failure and will avert a larger war.
Australia and Netherlands have launched legal action against Russia over the downing of the Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. Both nations launched the proceedings in the International Civil Aviation Organization, naming Russia as responsible for the incident under the international law.
Australia and the Netherlands have been seeking compensation and an apology from Russia for the MH17 disaster that saw 298 people killed, including 196 Dutch nationals, 43 Malaysians and 38 Australians. Russia, however, denied involvement despite findings of an international investigation that the flight was brought down by a Russian missile in eastern Ukraine. Last year, Dutch prosecutors charged 3 Russians and a Ukrainian with murder in the shootdown of MH17 and demanded life sentences for the suspects. All 4 are, however, still at large. The flight was on its way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was shot down on 17 July 2014.
That's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com or the Astro AWANI app. I'm Saramia. Thank you for watching and we'll see you soon.
Yang telus dan tulus bersama yang paling